Why is Guinea considered a racial slur? Looking at the Italian American and African American experience, there is a lot of overlap between these two communities. So the term's evolution into a slur reflects these broader themes, though, of colorism. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel, where we talk about American identity and family stories. And I love to bring those two parts together. And today I'm going to touch on something that's probably going to get me in trouble with YouTube. I had trouble with YouTube a couple weeks ago where they were flagging my content for the word colored. And my mom's uncle's birth certificate, he's listed as colored, as are my mom's grandparents. These are sensitive topics, but I think it is really important to have a place to have a dialogue, for us to have a conversation. And so today I want to talk about an equally sensitive phrase or word, and that is the word Guinea. Before we talk about the origins of that word, I just want to invite you, if you're interested in connecting further or having an ad-free experience, that you can join me over at Patreon. It's $3 a month, no YouTube, which I think gets increasingly important as I'm digging into the American story. And there's a lot of ugly parts that we are not really allowed to talk about publicly, which I think really is a shame. And if you'd like to support the channel another way, one of the issues with getting flagged is that YouTube will keep all of the ad money. And so that's a problem for me, because I am doing this now in lieu of going back to teaching. If you drink coffee or you know someone who does, I actually just partnered with Phoenix Coffee Club, and the owner, Dave, hand wrote these notes for me. And I am a huge coffee drinker. You know, I love going out to get a coffee. Thank you for everyone who has sent me a coffee to work at the cafe, but sometimes I have to work at home. The shame. And so I've really enjoyed brewing my own coffee. And if you want to grab some coffee from the folks over at the Phoenix Coffee Club, you can use my code NYTN for 10% off. And so that will help you. It helps the channel a lot. And it's a company that I'm really excited to support. Let's dig in to this story. And what is so interesting to me as I've been on this journey of uncovering family history, in particular, looking at the Italian American and African American experience, there is a lot of overlap between these two communities. And if you want to see more of the work I've done on that, I'll leave a link to the playlist below. My brothers will use this term with each other and their Italian American friends. I've heard it a ton. And I think that there are places in communities where we reclaim words that were used as slurs, right? And that happens in other communities as well. But I think it is really important to still understand where this term came from, because there are a lot of Italian Americans who believe that we should be repulsed by this word. And so I want to kind of pick apart the origin story. Where did this term come from, and why is it considered offensive? Let's go to popular media. I actually reached out to Spike Lee because there's this scene in Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee's film, listing all of the pejoratives against Italian Americans, and it's kind of going back and forth where you're hearing slurs used against African Americans and then Italian Americans, and it's just kind of going back and forth. And one of the words that you're going to hear for the Italian American is a guinea. Contrary to popular belief, there's been a lot of people saying a guinea derives from this economic condition or job wage of like, you got a guinea a day. Or like you're making like a penny a day working. But the term's lineage is actually far more complex, tied not to labor, but to lineage and land. So it's a journey that's going to bring us back to the 1600s, where the term Guinea is referring to a region along the west coast of Africa. Some people actually believe that it stems from a tribal word in Africa. I think it's pronounced Agana, which translates to black people. But as Italian Americans, and here I think it's important to stop and say it wasn't just Italian Americans, because when my dad's grandparents came over, the ship manifest specifically said Southern Italian. That's what was printed on there. There was a massive distinction made between whether or not you were a Northern Italian or a Southern Italian. Southern Italian immigrants, who were the majority of immigrants coming to the United States, began arriving here. Particularly Sicilians, like my dad's side of the family, have darker complexions, often curly hair, just darker features, but not always, but a lot of the time. Guinea found a new target. Martin W. Lewis articulated this shift, noting that Guinea is the, quote, most vile racial slur against Italian Americans. Even if Italian kids nowadays use it with each other without really knowing where it came from, but it was a particular sting for Sicilians, for Southern Italians. I did a video a few days ago with Professor Luca in Rome, and we talked about the question, does Africa begin in Rome? And just the complexities of that and what a loaded phrase that is. You know, this is seen still as pretty offensive, especially by the older generations. About 10 years ago, there was like a Real Housewives of New Jersey star, and I don't watch that, but I remember seeing this in the news. She had this quote, and I'm going to read it to you. And she said, even when I was 8 years old, even though I was adopted, I knew my heritage was Italian, and I hated the American food my parents made. So I learned to hang with my Guinea friends, and whenever I would taste a dish, I would go to the store and reproduce the dish. Like, several Italian Americans just kind of like, were like, whoa, like, that's an offensive term. You should never use it. It's not acceptable. You need to have better judgment. John Marino said, he's the National Executive Director at the National Italian American Foundation, or at least he was. And he said it was regrettable and alarming that she would use such a pejorative term that reinforces a negative image and harmful stereotype of an entire ethnic group. I don't disagree with him, but I think it's also important to come alongside what he's saying. And it's like, well, why is Guinea considered a racial slur? It's because the Sicilians and Southern Italians were being, they were equated with Black people. So the term's evolution into a slur reflects these broader themes, though, of colorism. And I think sometimes people hear colorism and they say, oh, it's just another woke thing. Like, I can't deal with this. And I just want to preface this by saying I am not a liberal, not a Republican either. I honestly feel politically homeless. I feel like we can't even have these conversations because someone will immediately be tallying points for the Republicans or the Democrats and who's winning in this conversation, who's this benefiting, instead of just letting us have a conversation as Americans and even global citizens. Like, let us just be able to talk without that. And I think that in this particular thing, like, you can see, like, the colorism is a real thing. Like, you may not like that terminology, and that's fine, replace it with something else. But what was happening here was that the Sicilians were being cast as other in the American racial hierarchy upon arriving. Folks are seeing one side of the coin saying, yeah, this is pejorative, but like the other side of the coin is, well, why is that? And what does that mean about our culture and our culture's history? What does that mean about the American story in general? So much bigger that I think one person with a small YouTube channel can take head on. But I think bringing it to the forefront, bringing things into the light is part of how you fix things. I don't know if this is true, so scientists, maybe you want to jump in. But I remember hearing as a little girl that the sun killed a lot of bacteria. Like, you could put certain things outside into the sunlight and it would kill. It was like a natural antibacterial. And that's kind of how this feels to me, where it's like, if we can get some of this stuff out and we can talk about it and just like say, here it is, and I don't have an agenda and I don't have anything, I want to talk about this with you. I think shining a light on this stuff is hugely important. And so that's why it bothers me that I've faced so much censorship here on YouTube talking about these things, because I never talk about hate or hating people or pointing the finger or blaming people. That's not what I'm about. What I want us to realize is that we are all in this together, and our family stories may have diverged from different paths along the way, but if we go back far enough, we will see a lot of us have had very similar experiences. Our families, our ancestors have had very similar experiences, and we should be empathizing with each other and standing with each other and loving each other better. Dealing with the term Guinea and what it represents. And I'm not trying to get out here and tell people you can't use that term. If you're Italian American, if you want to use it with each other, whatever. Like, my brothers aren't going to listen to me. They're still going to use it. It's like, whatever. But it's important to educate ourselves about what it means so that we can have a better understanding about who we are and what our families have gone through. Thank you to everyone who has been here, and I plan on doing some more videos soon on my Creole side. I'm still trying to get my cousin Alex Lee on here. We had something scheduled and then I had to cancel last minute, so I'm still planning to get on here. He's like the Creole king. He's like the Creole genealogist, and I'll be so excited to bring him on here. And, you know, Italians have so much history in the Creole community, especially in Louisiana, especially in New Orleans. It's incredible. And I love seeing that. And I want to pull apart some of those positive stories because there are so many. So thank you so much for being here. And don't forget to like coffee, or you know someone who does. I would love to have you go to the link below for Phoenix Coffee Club and use the code NYTN for 10% off. And you get some delicious coffee. Dave will send it over to you, and you could support the channel. Thank you so much. So glad that you're here. We'll talk soon.